Hello and welcome to this week's reading vlog in which we are in beautiful Ireland. Hello, so after a very long day, I'm very tired, but we have arrived at our accommodation for the first 2 nights of the trip. We are in our most northerly location this evening, so tomorrow the plan is to do around the Antrim coast from where we are and some inland bits as well, I think. I don't know the exact itinerary, but we will find out day to day, but we are here. It's a really cute cottage. It's kind of more of an apartment really, but it's really nice and very cosy, which is very important. So in terms of what we've been up to so far, we've done a little bit of the tour this afternoon, but mainly it's just been a travelling day, and what a day it's been. It was really not the day to be relying on public transport. I'm the sort of person who normally drives everywhere, so today was already a logistical difficulty thinking about buses and trains and planes and everything else, but of course typically it would be today that there was a bus strike. So I ended up having to get a taxi into the city instead, to then get the train to the airport, to then get the plane to Ireland. And I am now here and I've met up with my dad and we are en route. We have arrived, as I said, at our first night's accommodation. So everything has gone to plan in the end, but it was a little bit of a unexpected drama that I could have done without, but there we are. I've also made some really good reading progress. So I've been reading Of Blood and Fire by Ryan Cahill, and as you can see I'm already halfway through this. This is proving to be a really fast read, which I'm very pleased about. It was exactly the kind of fantasy book that I wanted to read today and that I'd chosen to bring on this holiday. I didn't know much about it, I'd heard of it and thought that it would be good, but just reading a brief synopsis I thought, yeah, that's something I probably will enjoy, and indeed it's proving to be so. It's nothing groundbreaking, there's nothing in here that I haven't read before in lots of different iterations of fantasy books, but I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I'm liking the characters and the world. It's a really quick writing style as well. So even though it is a fantasy world, I'm not finding that I'm bogged down with world building and lots of characters and things. So it's actually very speedy to read, as you can tell from how much I've read today. Though I'm slightly concerned I will now run out of reading material because I've read this so quickly. But I do hope to consume lots of audiobooks as well on this trip, as I'll be spending lots of time in the car. Anyway, now for some unpacking and get some food and just have a nice cozy evening, probably a little bit more reading too, and enjoy my first night of this trip. Hello and welcome to our first full day here in Ireland, and amazingly the sun is actually out, as you might be able to tell from the lighting. I do not imagine it will last very long, but we'll take it as a positive start and head off for day 1 of the road trip. and welcome to day 2. We are heading off this morning, leaving the cottage we've been staying in and actually staying in a hotel this evening in a completely different part of Ireland. So we're heading down to the mountains of Mourne today, which I've never been to before. I have done bits of Antrim before, but Mourne is a completely new area to me, so I'm really looking forward to this. I do also have some reading updates for you. So I did manage to read a good number of stories in this beautiful Irish fairy tales book that I found here in the cottage, but these are so much fun. These are ridiculous. I'd forgotten just how absurd and outlandish original fairy tales are, but I've had a great time with this. I'm not sure how many pages I've read, probably about 150, but as a little addition to my reading, it was well worth it for the entertainment value, if nothing else. They're so far-fetched, and I do typically prefer stories based on fairy tales rather than the fairy tales themselves, but it's been interesting learning a little bit more about some of the more famous and lesser-known characters in Irish mythology as well. So this book will be staying here, but I have also made some good progress with my own folklore book, which I brought with me, which I don't have to hand right now, I've packed it, but I am about 2/3 of the way through that one. I only have the last section to go. So similarly to the Irish fairy tales book, this is also very far-fetched in its content. However, it's a little more palatable because it's being told as somebody recounting tales and discussing different customs from different areas and this kind of thing. So it's not just the stories themselves, if that makes sense. It's more like a commentary or an essay on them. So I'm finding this very enjoyable and picking up on little bits that I knew before and little things that I'm learning for the first time as well. So it's a very folkloric week so far, it would seem. I do want to get back to reading the Of Blood and Fire this evening. I didn't read any of that yesterday, but I am really looking forward to pushing myself back into that world and just immersing myself in more fantasy goodness. And I probably realistically will finish this in the next day or so, and then goodness knows what I'll read. So we'll be rooting through the audiobooks, I'm sure, unless there happens to be any books in the next place we stay after the hotel. But one thing at a time, let's head off to Mourne today and hopefully enjoy lots more beautiful scenery. So it is now Thursday morning. I think it's Thursday. I'm losing track of the days, but pretty sure it's Thursday. And we plan to start off the day today with a walk in the beautiful Mourne area, which we were exploring yesterday, before heading south later on today down to Willow, which is the final stage of this trip. I'm having such a good time on this road trip. I always love traveling around and seeing lots of different nature areas, and I just absolutely don't want to go back home. This is exactly the kind of break from work and from responsibility and people and everything else that I just so needed, and I don't want it to be over. But nevertheless, we have a couple more days to go, and I'm sure they will be just as wonderful as the trip has been so far. I also have a bit more reading progress to update you on. I read a good chunk more of Blood and Fire last night, just before dinner, and then a bit more in the evening afterwards. So I'm now only have that smaller chunk left, which I think is about 160 pages. As before, I'm really enjoying this. Nothing new, but very much everything that I like about fantasy novels. We have now met the dragon in this series. I don't think that's a spoiler given that there's a dragon egg on the cover, but I was really excited to see dragons because always I love dragons in fantasy books, and our characters are kind of coming into themselves a little bit more. I always love that trope in fantasy books of our young characters in their sort of coming of age journey and being faced with hardships that they shouldn't necessarily experience at that age, and having to learn their crafts and their skills and magic and fighting skills and going on adventures. And it's just everything I love about this kind of book. So still really enjoying this. It's still very fast-paced to read as well. The way that it's written, it feels very immersive. It's not basic at all, but it does feel like something that I am indeed managing to get through very quickly. So I anticipate finishing this off today. Also, I can't remember if I've actually told you much about this story, so I'll just give a quick synopsis here. So Blood and Fire is the first book in the Bound and the Broken series. I'm not sure whether that's a trilogy, maybe. Regardless, I will be continuing. It's very good. And this book follows three protagonists. We have Kaelin, Dan and Rist, who are boys of around 18 or so, who have grown up all their lives in a small village called the Glade, and it's just a very kind of quaint family village setting to start with. I think one of the boys' father is the blacksmith, one of them runs the tavern. You know, it's a very typical fantasy setting that you might expect. And at the very start of this book, all three of the boys have to undergo what is called their calling, I think it is, where they have to go into the forest for 3 days and 3 nights, and basically it's a survival test, and whoever manages to hunt the greatest animal, so whatever the largest or most deadly animal is that comes after them as prey, if they can kill it and bring back proof, then they are the victors of this challenge. And so our three boys go into the woods and are faced with all kinds of things which are not quite what are expected for 18-year-olds to be facing, and bring news back to the village, and adventure ensues. We do have the usual hardship tropes in this. We have families being split apart. We have the boys having to go on this unexpected journey. We meet lots of new characters as well along the way. We have different races in this. So we have elves as well as the menfolk of this story. We have dragons, like I've said. And it's just really good. I'm really enjoying this. Lots of mythical creatures as well who live in the forests that they travel through. So this is just the perfect adventure story, and I really look forward to continuing with it. And I must look up how many more books there are in this series and probably order the next one. So without further ado, let's do a little bit more reading this morning with a coffee and enjoy this lovely view through the window. We have sunshine this morning, which I'm very happy about. And then I will take you along with me on my walk a little later on today. Definitely in my happy place. This is the most beautiful forest I think I've ever been to. The peace and quiet, the dappled sunlight through the branches. It's absolutely perfect. It's such gorgeous sun this morning as well. I wish we could stay here forever. So, quick catch up with coffee this morning as I get ready to leave for our final full day of this trip. We're going to explore the Wicklow Mountains a bit more today. You will have seen some footage yesterday. I was crossing the moors through the mountains on our way here, which was just the most beautiful day. We got some gorgeous photography as well of the car in the amazing setting and just the most fun roads. I cannot wait to drive across some of those today. But in terms of reading, which is what I've checked in to update you on, I have actually finished now Of Blood and Fire by Ryan Cahill, and this was everything I hoped it would be. I really, really enjoyed this. Solid 4-star read. Wasn't a 5 because, as I've said before, nothing new or particularly groundbreaking happened, but it was just a solid read. It was everything that I like about fantasy. It ticked all of the boxes. I really like all of the characters. We've had some good progressions of the plot and a lot of plot points left open for development in the sequel, which I very much want to get my hands on soon, so I will be ordering that probably later today so that I can start reading that once I am back home. It does, however, leave me with the slight problem that I only have about 25 pages of my folklore book to read as well, which I can probably read this evening, but I don't have a physical book to take to the airport, so we can do a bit of book shopping tomorrow in Dublin Airport and get something to read on the plane home. But for now, let's go out and enjoy the rest of this beautiful final day. The sun is out at the moment, but how long that will last, I do not know. It's been sunshine and showers all week, but it kind of adds to the atmosphere, really, so more sunshine and showers to come, I'm sure, more mountain scenery, and I will let you know how the day has gone and kind of wrap up the trip a little bit either this evening or tomorrow morning. I'm back again with an update, a lot quicker than I actually expected to be. As you will probably have seen, I'm having the most beautiful day out in the Irish countryside. Wicklow is definitely my favourite area that we have visited so far. I've loved all the areas of Ireland, but this one is particularly special to me. It feels so familiar, I feel at home here even though I've never been here before. I think because it reminds me so much of some of my favourite bits of Scotland, which obviously is always a special place for me. So I'm really having a lovely day, but I am checking in verbally to update you because unexpectedly I've actually finished another book. So after catching up with you earlier, I was looking through Scribd through the books I'd saved to see if anything caught my eye that I could start today while out and about, and I decided to start Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. I'd saved this one on Scribd about a year ago now, but hadn't yet got round to picking it up, and I've heard really good things about T. Kingfisher's writing and haven't read any of their books yet, so I thought this was the perfect choice. I picked this up because I'd heard it was kind of vaguely fairy tale but in a bit of a different way, and that most certainly works for this story as a description. So in the story we follow Mara, who is the youngest of 3 sisters and has spent most of her life growing up in a convent, whereas her sisters have been exposed to the royal courts. But one day things change and Mara finds out that her older sister, who is married to this prince, is actually in danger from him. He is very much an evil prince rather than the kind of shining figure that everyone in the kingdom believes him to be. And Mara and her unlikely band of companions have to go on a bit of a quest to save Mara's sister and her unborn child from this evil prince. Now, I love the fantasy trope of kind of a ragtag bunch of unlikely allies, and this one is very much present in this story, which I love. So Mara teams up with a reluctant fairy godmother, a old warrior who they save from the goblin market, and probably my favourite of the 3, a grave witch who actually has a pet chicken which is possessed by a demon, and that very much gives you a flavour for this kind of story. But I really loved it. It was so much fun. It confused me a little in that I assumed it was an adult book because Mara, our main character, is 13 and all of the characters are adults, so that would to me hint that it was for adults, but at the same time it feels very childlike in the way that it's told, and it reminds me a lot of my favourite things about middle grade stories and children's books, and that kind of fast-paced adventure and jumping from one piece of action to another. But I do feel like it probably is more for adults. It certainly isn't YA, it doesn't fit that one at all, but regardless, I really enjoyed it, and I would give this a solid 4 out of 5 stars, the same as I did of Blood and Fire, although for very different reasons. And I really now want to read more by T. Kingfisher. So look out for more books by them in my videos coming soon. I'd better go for now anyway and finish off exploring. It's actually starting to get a little dark, so definitely the end to the day, but a very positive day all round, and I'm really sad to go home tomorrow, but I will certainly check in with you again tomorrow and show you my journey home, and probably wrap up this video once and for all once I am back in England. Taken many hours of travelling in public transport of various types, but everything has kind of gone to schedule and I am back home. It's now about 5 p.m. and I'm just looking forward to a relaxing evening after all of the travel busyness, and actually hoping to finish this book this evening. I've got on really well with this. As you can see, I've read a good chunk. I'm at page 262, so I have pretty much 100 pages left to go. This I will update you on a bit later, or maybe tomorrow when I finished it, but was a very good choice. I'm glad I picked this up. I wasn't sure if it was going to be something I'd like or not, but there wasn't a huge amount of choice in the shop, and this is something I've heard highly talked about in the past, recommended, that's the word I'm struggling to get to. So I thought I would give it a go. It's very much standard kind of fantasy romance vibes. Feels a little YA, I'm not sure if it is YA, but it feels a bit like it. It's an 18-year-old protagonist, and just kind of the feel of the story and the way that it's told feels like it's YA, but that is not necessarily a negative thing. I just wasn't sure what to expect going into it, but yes, definitely enjoying this. I'm intrigued to see how it ends, and I think there is a sequel, so maybe I'll pick that one up in a future video. But anyway, rambling over, I'm going to sit down and go and eat something because I've hardly eaten all day. and have a drink also, and then hopefully finish this up this evening. Hello, so it is now the next day and I've had a very lazy and cosy, relaxed morning finishing off my book. I enjoyed this. It was very much exactly the sort of book that I wanted yesterday to get me through all of my travelling. It was light, it was fast-paced, but not too crazy that I had to feel like I couldn't put it down to obviously get on and off lots of transport and be interrupted by things. And it was intriguing enough, again, without being too complicated, that I had to concentrate really, really hard. So I think it was just about the right balance. I enjoyed it in the end more than I thought I would. I wasn't sure, honestly, on picking up this book, but there wasn't a huge amount of choice. It's probably like a 3 to 4, I'm going to say a low 4 out of 5-star book for me. So definitely enjoyable. Not sure it's something I would particularly read again, but I probably would finish the series. I do think if I'm going to carry on with the series, though, I'm going to need to do it fairly quickly, otherwise I will forget what happened in this book, but I will try and find it in the library, I think, and continue the series fairly soon. So I liked the other aspects to the story as well as just the fantasy romance bit. So I liked learning about Amelia's family, and I liked the Sicilian culture that we got to explore in this. I've not read too many books set in and around that, so that was really interesting. I liked the mystery to solve as well as part of this, so it did pull together lots of different things that I enjoy. And the romance was not too galling. Like, I'm not a romance reader. I don't tend to read romance books and books that are particularly romance heavy, even if they're not romance books, if that makes sense. But this was okay. I do feel like subsequent books may explore that side of the story a little more, so I may well not enjoy the sequel as much, but on the whole, not a bad book. So I think on that note, I am going to wrap up this vlog here because it's probably very long by this point, but I really hope you've enjoyed coming along on my Irish adventure with me and enjoying all of the reading productivity as well. I've read some varied things this week, but I have read very productively, as I always do on holiday, and I've really enjoyed having you along with me. So without further ado, give this video a like down below if you enjoyed it. Chat to me in the comments about any of the books I've read, any of the places I've been. I always love to chat to you. And please consider subscribing if you'd like to see more content from me. It really, really means a lot and helps grow my channel too. Thank you for watching. I will see you again in the next video, so goodbye for now.